Welcome, and thank you for coming to this year's Vietnam Veteran Wreath Laying Ceremony here at the nation's Vietnam Veterans Memorial. My name is Chuck Crosby, and I'm the Chief of Operations for the Vietnam War Commemoration. It is my distinct honor to introduce a man who has also spent his life in service to our country, a veteran of Operation Iraqi Freedom, the director of the Vietnam War Commemoration, Major General Edward Crystal. Sir.
Thanks. Thanks for that great introduction. Hey, good morning, everybody. Thank you for coming out here on this beautiful Friday. I want to thank all of our distinguished guests, especially our Vietnam veterans and their families. Thank you for coming out today. I'd like to welcome our distinguished guests and point out a few that are with us today. We have Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency Director, Kelly McCaig. And from American Gold Star Mothers, we have the National President, Pam Stemple. National First Vice President, Patty Elliott. And from the National Service Office, Leanne Forsyth. I also want to thank and acknowledge our distinguished participants in today's ceremony and thank them for their service. They represent not just Vietnam, but veterans who served and came home, including the sacrifice of their families. But we are also gathered here today to pay tribute to those who never made it home. The 58,281 names on this wall engraved in the Vietnam Veterans Memorial behind me, the Gold Star families that this monument represents, and also the 1,549 service members who are still unaccounted for. Before I read the names of our participants, I'd like to share a few words about the history and significance of today, National Vietnam War Veterans Day. 7 years ago, legislation was signed into law, establishing this date, the 29th of March, in perpetuity, as a national day for the United States to recognize its Vietnam veterans. That legislation was known as the Vietnam War Veterans Recognition Act of 2017. This law, carved into the very fabric of our nation, is an annual national day of observance to honor our Vietnam veterans for their service and their families. This day joins 6 other annual holidays, military-centric national holidays, codified into law. Among them are Memorial Day, Independence Day, and Veterans Day. In case you're wondering how March 29th was chosen, let me fill you in. March 29th, 1973 was a day that the U.S. Military Assistant Command, Vietnam, was disestablished. It was also the day the last combat troops departed Vietnam. Finally, it was the start of a 7-day period where Hanoi released the last prisoners of war. So you can see why March 29th is a fitting day to commemorate our Vietnam veterans and their family members. In our past National Vietnam War Veterans Day ceremonies, Gold Star family members have been paired with the senior officers and the senior enlisted leaders from each of our services of the armed forces. This year, we are privileged to have Vietnam veterans and the son of a Vietnam veteran, all paired with a junior enlisted service member representing each service of the armed forces. These pairings specifically highlight Vietnam veterans paying tribute to their fallen comrade in arms. In addition, as we call our nation to remember and continue this sacred observance for years to come, it symbolizes the legacy of our Vietnam veterans passed down from generation to the next generation of our men and women in uniform. Finally, participating today, as I mentioned, is the son of a Vietnam veteran who is currently listed as unaccounted for, to honor and remember the families of those who remain awaiting news of their loved ones. Today we have 8 wreaths. 6 represent the uniformed service branches, 2 represent the National Guard Bureau and our former prisoners of war and those unaccounted for from the Vietnam War. The participants accompanying these wreaths are Mr. Jerry Tempest, Mr. Joe Griffiths, Mr. Patrick Hughes, Mr. Walt Sides, Mr. Frank White, Mr. Michael Overmeyer, Mr. Philip Todd, Miss Nancy Fassbender, and Mr. Jan Scruggs. And finally, Mr. Rick Holland, the son of Technical Sergeant Melvin Holland, who, as I stated, remains unaccounted for to this day. As we proceed with today's formal ceremony, let's remember the price that our Vietnam veterans and their families paid, and let's continue to honor their sacrifice, their legacy, and also the sacrifice of our Gold Star families. May God continue to bless all of you, and may God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
Heavenly Father, for 50 years, over 50 years, our nation has watched our sons and our daughters who gave so much of their lives in a distant country called Vietnam. They have done their best to heal from wounds that only you know and you understand. We join our hearts and our minds in this special moment together, thankful that our grateful nation remembers our Vietnam veterans' sacrifices.
Good morning. The Vietnam veterans that are participating in today's ceremony, if you could step to my right, your left, you will see all the junior enlisted service members over there in their dress uniforms. If you could move over to them, we'll go ahead and get you paired up. For everybody else that's viewing today's ceremony, if you could just stay where you are, gather around.
Jerry Tempest right and Joe Phil Todd. Oh, you're right here. Oh,
Sir, where would you like to be pinned up?
I already have one. Right? Okay, just maybe right here. Fine. Thank you. You get it?
Yes, sir.